On this channel, my goal is to make sewing more accessible to all, but who am I to even be teaching that? Well, this is the story of my sewing journey. My name is Jessica Capalbo, and in November of 2020, I launched a successful, sustainable fashion brand. Let's start by talking about the concept because this is arguably the most important part of your business. Without a clear vision, you're almost bound to fail. So where exactly did the idea for my business come from and how did it start? Well, surprisingly, it actually wasn't even my idea, but it was something that I was passionate about, so I ran with it. Like most people, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was laid off from my job. At the time, I was a manager overseeing about 11 employees. This was a devastating time for obvious reasons, but what's more is that just a few weeks in from losing my job, I found out that I had also lost one of my employees. He was in his early 20s and had suffered some serious injuries after a rock climbing accident. I won't go into all the details, but he didn't make it to the hospital and I found out through a news article. I was a big mess to say the least, and it took me a really long time to be able to talk about this without overflowing into tears. But all that to say that I was in lockdown, I didn't have a job, I was emotionally torn, and I needed an outlet. So cue the sewing machine. I started learning to sew clothes to distract myself from the storm that was life, and I quickly fell in love with the whole process. I shared some of my sewing makes on Instagram, and my friend Lizzie reached out to me to see if I would make her a jacket. Of course, I was absolutely over the moon about this and said yes. This yellow jacket was the result, and it was the first time anyone ever paid me to sew clothes for them. And that was just the beginning of sewing clothes for friends. And then fast forward to being back to work and doing life semi-normally again. I get a call from out of the blue from my friend Lizzie, who I made that jacket for, and she proposes that we start a sustainable fashion brand where we hand make all of the clothes ourselves. I didn't know exactly what that would entail, but it sounded like a lot of fun and was very in line with my interests, so that's exactly what we did. In November of 2020, Lizzie and I started sewing clothes for others as a fun side thing that we did in addition to our full-time jobs. After a few months, Lizzie decided that she wanted to go back to school and took a step back from the business. I continued on and slowly but surely started to scale the business to more customers. Now, let's fast forward to the part that you've all been waiting for. In July of 2021, I quit my job at 23 years old to sew clothes from home full-time. Now, let me make something very clear for anyone who wants to quit their job and become an entrepreneur. I did not quit my job to pursue my passion. I quit my job and then I pursued my passion. Now, the reason that I quit my job is kind of besides the point. It's important for you to realize that pursuing my company in a full-time capacity was a completely separate decision from leaving my job. After I quit my full-time job, I was at a crossroad. One path led to a new job, while another path led to trying to scale my business to more customers. You already know that I chose the latter, but I was able to do that because of three main reasons. One, I had already built a customer and audience base through social media while simultaneously working my full-time job. Two, I had set myself up with a low cost of living because I'm generally just frugal as and three, I had a good chunk of savings set aside that I was comfortable dipping into to get my business off the ground. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I even pursued that through my college degree, so it's no wonder that I started setting up my life early on to own a business even before I was ready. Choosing to go full-time with my business was one of the best decisions that I ever made. It was the first time I could go to sleep when I was tired, wake up when my body was rested, eat food that I made from home, and work out whenever I want. I could really just take care of myself. Now, of course, that isn't to say that there weren't hard times, but overall, it was a really healthy decision for my life. I believe that preparing myself to start a business one day and putting myself first once I did start that business were two pivotal reasons that my business was successful. And to be clear, when I say success, I mean that I was making enough money through my business to support my everyday living expenses. I'll go deeper into what that actually means in a future video of this series, so be sure to stick around if you're interested in that. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to tell you what you should or shouldn't do with your life, but I do want to share my unique experience with you because I think that it can help you make an informed decision if you're interested in starting your own handmade business. So with all that being said, this little series is going to be a deep dive into my made-to-order clothing company. I'm going to go over all my best tips and tricks, and at the end, I'll tell you where my company is today. I have a lot of videos in mind, but if you have anything specific that you want me to cover, please leave a comment down below. I'm a pretty open book, so feel free to ask away. Now here's a little tribute to 2020. 2020 had so many ups and downs, but there's so much for me to be grateful for. We had some great pre-climbing pandemic days, fun training days with friends, a trip to San Diego, a trip to San Francisco, and even a trip to Mexico. Right after Mexico, we had one last night out before everything began to shut down. This feels like a whole other life now. I believe this was the first day that I found out that I lost my job. I felt devastated, but had great support from my friends. Life turned into lots of puzzles, lots of mask making, and lots of roller skating. In May, I lost my friend Tristan. It felt surreal to be in the middle of a pandemic and not be able to grieve with your friends. In order to cope, I worked on projects day in and day out. I rekindled my love for sewing, and it's brought me so much happiness. I sewed this denim jacket for my friend Lizzie, and that began the cycle of sewing clothes for friends. I can't even express how it feels to see other people wear the clothes you've made for them. That quickly progressed into starting a sewing company with Lizzie. Now I'm wishing you and your loved ones all the best in 2021, 2022, and all of the years to come.